action creates confidence. Perseverance creates confidence. Resilience creates confidence, but also the embodiment of taking time to listen to the fear and the old ancient wounding and just hearing it out, not fixing it, not solving it, just hearing it out. Because so many times I hear women say, I just don't even speak to myself anymore. The only words I hear is, I'm ugly. I've got wrinkles. I'm getting old. What's my neck doing? Like there's so much inner judgment.
Hey, Soul Sisters. Welcome back to another episode of the Hey, Soul Sister podcast. And today's conversation is one that so many of you need right now.
We're diving into confidence, but not the surface level, just believe in yourself kind. We're talking about real confidence, the kind that actually holds when you're making big decisions, showing up online, and stepping into your next level.
Because let's be honest, so many women look confident on the outside, but inside, they're second guessing everything.
And that's exactly why we are so excited to introduce today's guest, Gayle Wilson.
Gayle is a professional confidence mentor. She's a speaker and author who helps people build deep self-trust and lead themselves with clarity and conviction.
And with her background in nervous system work and emotional resilience, she doesn't just teach confidence, she teaches you how to actually feel safe, trusting yourself.
And in today's episode, we're breaking down why you might be still doubting yourself, even when you know you're capable of more.
We're talking about the confidence gap no one addresses, how to stop second guessing yourself, and how to show up powerfully, even when you don't feel ready.
So if you've been sitting on decisions, holding yourself back, or waiting to feel ready,
this episode is going to shift something big for you.
let's get into it.
Welcome, Gayle.
Wow.
We're so rusty right
that
now.
planned? That was incredible.
Welcome, Gayle. It is so nice to have you on the podcast. I know we've been chatting a little bit and just following your work and what you're doing. And it's so much needed right now, especially where, women are feeling like this need to build businesses and to do it with that confidence. So really excited to dive into who you are, how you got here. Tell us more about that. Tell us where you came from and what put you in the spotlight of doing this work.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, ladies. I am delighted to be on your podcast and speaking, of service to all the women that you support. It doesn't matter where we live in the world. It doesn't matter how we were raised. If you have that fire in the belly, it's a part of the magnetic pull that comes towards us. So the work that I do, again, as business does, it's evolved. So initially I started doing in-person events, whether it was group events for the community or whether it was one-on-one coaching. And then as things have evolved and as I put myself into rooms, I realized the power of being able to hold presence in a space. And then that just kept moving me forward and forward and forward. And so now I work with large organizations through medical, all sorts of different directions. And it's incredible the way that I suppose when confidence is built on the inside, there is a difference in how you show up and how magnetic you become. And then that changes how easy it is to convert things. And I remember back in the day, like trying to find the next client and the next client and the next client and sitting in this like real internal panic really frequently. And then I just took myself on as a client. And don't get me wrong, I still have some fear. I still have some wounds that I'm still healing, but they don't rule my life anymore. And they don't stop me from showing up. And that's what I teach to all sorts of different leaders, CEOs, general managers, because it doesn't matter how educated you are. What I've learned is so many people are suffering from imposter syndrome. So many people are suffering from old wounding that is preventing them from showing up in a way they truly feel like their mission requires of them.
So incredible, Gayle, and love the journey, by the way. And the work that you do, I think there's a lot of myths, like fake beliefs around confidence. And, you hear a lot of just believe in yourself or fake it till you make it or, those sorts of things. But I think when we think about women, particularly and like the confidence versus self-trust, as well as like high achieving women, how they still can feel unsure. Why do so many women look confident but still second guess everything?
Well, I suppose it depends on what you deem to look confident, isn't it? Because for me, it's grace. Okay. So when I look at someone, I'm looking for an aura point of view, because I can see someone who can have a blowout and a full face of makeup and have amazing clothes. But if there's something in the way her eye twitches, is there something in the way I notice her breath isn't moving through her chest and through her body, then I can spot it a mile away. And it's not that it's false, or, we all have to fake it till we make it sometimes. It's more that what is behind that woman that is not quite there yet, no matter how many accolades she has, how far into her career. For me, all it does is breed curiosity. And I love storytelling. And I love it because I don't have to be emotionally attached to someone's wounds to be able to help them kind of pull it apart and unpack it and fall back in love with the wound. And I suppose that's so much of the work that I do is, and I suppose I'll take this minute to talk about my wound, because this is the one I've had to really work on, and it's not totally eradicated. But for me, one of the biggest things that held my business back and still does in the micro moments moving in the way that I am is rejection. My relationship with rejection was so, so severe. And it was a series of behaviors from other people. It wasn't one monumental thing. It was a series of messages that were delivered to my brain that meant that when I feel about rejection, I feel this visceral response in my body, this fear, this quake that exists within me. So the work I know I've had to do is going in and meeting that quake, meeting that shake. And for a long time, it stopped me from following up on emails or turning up on camera or telling someone what I do when I turn up into a room for a network event. I would sort of play myself small because I didn't want to be rejected. I didn't want to sit in, I'm still not good enough. I'm still just not equal to others yet. And that haunted me for so long. And I think it haunts a lot of women. And when I come back to the crust of what the fear is behind the person that blocks their confidence from really shining. It's not always these big, huge, traumatic, disappointing moments. It's often this constant message that was being fed their whole life. It didn't always sting the way pain often stings. It was just this wiring. And then when they go into their business, they don't push themselves, they don't put themselves out there. And all of a sudden, their businesses reach these glass ceilings and they feel trapped in this little box that their fear created. And that's the confidence work I do, is to go in and be able to listen. What is it? What's in there? What's knocking on your door trying to talk to you? And how can you just absolutely love the shit out of it?
Yeah. And some of those wounds, like, I feel like there's different wounds, right? When you talk about confidence, and your
Mm,
wound was rejection. And I think a lot of women have these wounds of, not like being able to celebrate themselves too, and feeling like
mm.
this sense of like vanity when it comes to showing up, celebrating themselves. Can you talk a little bit about that? And what
I definitely can.
those women can, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in Australia, that one is massive. Tall poppy syndrome is massive suffering in Australian women and
Wait,
men,
what's
if
it
I'm
called
totally
again?
honest with
Sorry,
you.
I need to write that down.
Tall poppy syndrome. It's a book.
Tall poppy. Okay.
Yes. So I suppose the judgment that comes from others when you're really thriving and celebrating yourself, and how egotistical in Australian culture, ego is really not celebrated. I think it's pretty similar in Canada. Like everyone's so laid back. Everyone wants to no one's above anyone. No one's better than everyone else. And that is true. Humbling, that is true. If we sit in gratitude, that is a deep belief. But it doesn't mean we can't celebrate our wins. And it doesn't mean that we can't, absolutely acknowledge when we've done something brilliant. I did a video recently that was really successful, and it talked about that I finally locked in this corporate client, a particular bundle that I'd been manifesting and talking to spirit about for quite a long time. I celebrated it in my knickers in this black and white reel that went up on my socials, and it created this rejoice. And the amount of people who have stopped me at the supermarket or at the school pickup to go, I feel like I know you so much more because I've seen you without your bra on and in a pair of knickers jumping around on social media. But that's the embodiment, right? Like that's the embodiment that helps our body soothe the burning ache or the burning sting. It's that embodiment that dances or sings at the top of the lungs or sits quietly in reflection and meditation. It doesn't always have to be loud and robust. It can be this like genuine inner smile that just makes your heart feel so warm. Why don't people do it more often? Well, sometimes I think that the world's moving so damn fast that we don't stop for those micro sensations and those micro moments. We're all about the big win. The biggest win is the only win. And for females who have been raised in quite comparative sort of generations through education systems and through even our workplaces, there's been so much comparison and competition. And what that means is we kind of corrupt why we're doing what we're doing if we're leading from competition and comparison. And Instagrams have been a huge example of that. So it's been insincere, and insincerity cannot coexist with confidence. It just can't. And so what we end up going through is, well, where's the sincerity in this? And that brings us back to our purpose and our why and all those sort of real cornerstone humbling actions that create those levels of, it creates abundance, it creates sincere connections. It means that you're going to have a business and a career that becomes magnetic to your kinds of people. And when we work in this way, we don't have hard clients. We don't have challenging clients who are, breaking contracts and doing all these things, because we're kind of working with that spirit version of ourselves that recognizes that, okay, I have fear, I have hesitation, I have a problem with people pleasing. Maybe I have a problem like rejection. However, if I think about my higher self, my holiest self, and remember that I'm an energy being having a human experience, that you kind of get to swim through and separate all of that earthly fear and remember the divine purpose that you were put here to do. And that's something that whenever I walk into a room and I'm scared and I'm nervous and I think about the mean girls at school or that one bully teacher or that first boyfriend that left me for the prettier girl, I can kind of go, they were just human experiences. But beyond all of that, there is a divine reason that I've been called into this space right here, right now. Fear doesn't even have a chance in that space because it's sincere and it's inner confidence. And it's also, ancient old wisdom played out before we were even created. And so that's so much of the work I do is that intuition space as well. And it makes everything so much more beautiful. It's not fluffy. It's not concrete. It's actually the most stabilizing thing you can bring in when you feel safe enough to listen to it.
So powerful, Gayle. So there's a couple of things that you mentioned that can really impact our confidence, which is number one, rejection, the fear of rejection, and also the lack of celebrating ourselves, being able to witness ourselves, acknowledge ourselves, and even in those little micro wins. When you're working with women, however, what are some other factors that can really impact our confidence in the way that we move in our life?
I see two kinds of women constantly coming to work with me. They're very different and their confidence hits are really different. And if I can just explain these two groups of women, now there's much more than this, but these are the two main women that I find seek me out. There seems to be a cohort of women who aren't traditionally educated, so they're not university trained, which in their career makes them feel inferior. So their confidence drops because they're not the smart girl. They're often intuitive and they're very connected with their body. But when it comes to their capacity to learn new things or to grow, they kind of often feel like the dumb one. And they go into that imposter syndrome of, I'm just not smart enough. I can't learn a new system. I can't learn a new program. So I'll just stay small because then I don't have to be proven wrong that I'm not very smart. So they don't always understand that that's it, but they'll articulate it. And it's when I go to networking events and, someone will go, oh, I didn't go to university. And they'll say it with this shame. And I go, me neither, babe. But we still can have our genius. We can still, and they're like, you didn't go? And I'm like, no. It's the conviction within us to know that our wisdom and our knowledge has just as much merit as someone who is formally trained. And so then we have this second cohort. They are very formally trained. They have been to every sleek event in a university and colleges that you could imagine. However, they've lived most of their life, under the pressure of proving themselves. They're so caught up in their mind that they're so disconnected to their body. So they don't understand the sensations in their body. They don't know what it's trying to tell them. And they run so fast on this proving hamster wheel that what ends up happening is they hit burnout much faster. They're unstable. They're shaking, they're sweating during the day because they're not understanding or listening to their body, because it's really anything from the collarbone and under has never really existed. It just got them to the rooms that they needed to be in. And so I do find I have these very two different women coming in. And what I love is when I create my community events, and we might have these, lawyers and doctors and surgeons, and then we might have someone who's a healer, and we might have someone who's a primary school teacher. And I love that when we come together, our titles don't exist. They can't in that space. There's no room for it. It's too sacred to create this comparativeness and this competition. And really, most people, no matter what they do, they actually want to remove themselves from it for just a little while. And that's when we do that and we feel that, either I want to connect back in with my inner self, or I have no option, but I have to connect in with my middle self. We find this common ground. And that's where people talk so freely and they just share genuine, real life, relatable stories. So they're probably the two kind of main women that I work with.
What are the sensations that actually show up in the body?
Yeah, well, depending on what the fear is. So, for example, if we're talking about that first cohort who have never really felt like they're the intelligent one and the smart one, they might have come from a different socioeconomic. So they often saw their parents struggling. They were week to week, or maybe they were in that, that up and down in the finances in their family home. So they've never known that level of stability where they were able to be in receivership all of the time. So often they'll talk about a fluttering in their body, a fluttering in their chest. That's like a panic for survival mode. And what that often comes with is nausea, confusion, heightened senses. It's that loud bangs really irritate them because they're always looking for when something's going to drop. They expect the bottom to fall out of everything that they create. So it's that fear and panic that they often sit in. Now, with that second cohort who are sitting in proving and elevated heart rates, right? They're sweaty. They feel shaky. They've got this restriction in their throat chakra where they feel like they've got so much to say, but it's so heavy that they can't get it out. So they often take a lot longer to talk and share. Whereas the first cohort, they'll just talk to the cows come home because they're not trying to protect anything. There's no level of, not that there's no level of pride attached to what they do, but they've kind of just known that sort of that lower vibration and they've owned it. They've kind of gone, yeah, we struggled, we did this, we did that. They're kind of a little bit more down to earth. Whereas that second cohort that are really educated, that have been very much living in their mind, they'll often be, and this is something I'll talk to both of you about, with a lot of the high functioning women that I work with. So I work in talk therapy. I work in that planning and that goal setting and performance outcomes. So how to quell the body and the mind when it's kicking off and you need to keep moving through. But I also do nervous system work, so energy work that is on a massage table and it's got vocal toning and sound bowls. And it's really interesting because a lot of women often express to me that they want to run. They want to run and they want to burn it all to the ground and start again. But obviously they can't. And so I find it really common. And I promise you, I don't think it's a perimenopause thing. I don't think it's a magnesium thing. But they'll go to lay down, and when the stillness comes over their body and mind before bed, they'll get this restless legs. And it happens the same on the energy table. And there's been times where I've been caring for these women and I'll physically have to lay my body over their legs and just keep saying, you're safe here. You're safe here. You don't need to run. You don't need to hide. And particularly with those high achieving women, that's really, really frequent. Over and over and over again, I see that in their body. And I think it's because they're not used to stillness in the mind. And so their body has this really strong aversion to, oh, we're quietening down. Oh, but we're not in sleep. Oh, we're in that gray area where everything that happens through the day comes up to haunt me. All my perfectionism comes up to, drown me slowly. All the things I said that kind of weren't quite right, or, that benchmark I didn't hit, or those volume of the list that I thought I would get through that I didn't get through. So all of that inadequacy comes up. And when they're not comfortable with failing, failure or they're not comfortable with their body, they find that they start to get these tremors coming up in their body as well, and in that gray area between awake and active to asleep. So that's another thing that I'm finding is coming up more and more and more the more women that I treat.
Wow. I don't know about you, Sherry, but I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I feel like you described me to a T in one of the
Yeah, the
cohorts of women.
second one?
Yeah,
Like,
the second
yeah.
for me.
I feel like I'm a little bit of both, though.
A little,
Does
yeah,
that make sense?
Mm.
be a little bit of both.
'Cause I feel
Oh,
okay, so, for
absolutely.
example, I didn't do university.
Mm.
So, when I was 14, I moved to India with my mom and my sister because my parents split up, and I had to learn a whole new culture and language and everything, so it kind of ruined the rest of my education, so I didn't get to finish, because I was too busy learning Hindi, how to read,
Mm.
write, speak it, right? And then I went back to Barbados, where I'm from, and I pretty much just went right into working, like, in
Mm.
retail, and I had to find my way through it. And so I didn't really get the formal education. Then I moved to Canada where I just did what I was doing there, which was travel and tourism just to get an in the country. But that wasn't really, to me, that wasn't really studying, business or something massive.
Mm.
So I struggle with the fact that I don't know a whole lot about business, even though I've opened two businesses. But I struggled with that fact that I didn't know everything. And so I had to fake it till I made it, basically. Right. And I would also struggle from proving. So what you're talking about, the second one, that
Mm.
was me. It was like I
Mm.
was so busy trying to get validation, proving myself. But again, it was like a fake it till you make it kind of situation. But every time I did that, I got better at it because I could remember why I was doing it, and I had to keep reminding myself, why am I doing this? And the
Mm.
intention started to become clear every time I would come on and someone would say, I resonate with what you said. And then I'm like, huh, it's not about me. It's about the impact that I'm creating. So I had to learn that on my own. It's not something that
Mm.
I was taught. But also the body, I can totally agree with you what you're saying on like how you feel in your body. Like I would post something and immediately go online and go delete,
Mm.
delete, because I would cringe, right? And so I can relate to both of those. And I think that a lot of women are probably listening right now and going, yeah, I'm scared of being seen. I'm afraid of visibility. Why? And
Mm.
there's so much in there that's deeper than just, you know, you didn't go to school, but there's a lot of like this self-worth and this like, do you agree? Like there's self-doubt about ourselves and the worth that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I talk about a couple of women about this. I wonder through our genetic coding, us being minimized and told to be quiet, our little chatty girls that often
Mhm.
many of us vivacious entrepreneurial women are. We were told so often, stop talking,
Yes.
be quiet. Are you finished yet? Get your story, hurry it up. All those kinds of things. And how I was saying before, they're not big, aggressive, sometimes, unfortunately for some women, they were big and nasty and aggressive. But for the vivacious, tenacious ones, it was more this message of being shut down and minimized and hurried up really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
definitely, I think, what you were just saying about, can I be both? Absolutely, you can. And I suppose the difference between the two and why one hasn't totally swallowed you whole is the tenacious, is the larger than life kindness and friendliness and, glass half full. Optimism is such a powerful, powerful
Mhm.
gift. And I thought everyone had it until I started, I was a hairdresser for 25 years and still started working in hairdressing. And I realized, wow, initiative and optimism is not something that's bred into society very often. And what a shame. Although I think, imagine having 5,000, 5 million of me, that'd be a lot of energy in the world. But I didn't realize that people aren't born with this desire for greatness and this absolute, you know, no apologies of what I think I'm capable of. And
Mm.
yeah, I have a problem with rejection. And yeah, there's this fear. But I think what you're talking about also, Sherry, is resilience,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
resilience to keep going. And even though you wanted to delete that video, even though you might have had these symptomatic experiences, what makes the difference between someone who has longevity and creates legacy is resilience. But the resilience isn't always about the outside world, it's about the relationship internally. And
Mhm.
that's where we start to build legacy is through what's the resilience with myself? How do I trust that I can have these thoughts and feelings and still go forward with them anyway, holding their hand as if it's the little me in the piggy tails walking alongside of me going, you shouldn't do that. That's not a great idea. And I often talk to my clients about my brain is so smart, and it's not just mine, it's everyone's brain, is so smart in the way it will manipulate me from my desire. And how
Mhm.
fear does this. So mine will, when I witness myself, it'll become a chameleon in the way it talks to me. So it will present in a couple of ways. The first way, when I'm thinking of posting that video, it'll start off quite jovial and it will go, oh, don't post that. No one wants to hear it. And it will be quite fun loving. And
Right.
it'll kind of be like step one of my resistance. And it will go, yes, don't worry about it. No one wants to see it. Everyone's too busy. And it'll be super casual and fun. And then the more me, the 44 embodied woman, moves forward, it starts to dig its heels in a little bit more. Well, no one
Mm.
likes what you have to say. No one thinks you've got anything worthy of saying, and it will get nastier. And then as I
Mhm.
push through that embodiment, I'm just listening. It's not controlling me. I'm just listening because I know it's old wounding. It's not who I am now. And it's just
Mhm.
a pattern in the brain. And then as I move forward, it'll be like, this is a bloody terrible idea. What are you doing? Like it'll quite chastise me quite heavily. And then I'll go, it's okay. Because do you know what? I'm one of 22 million people putting a reel up today. It's no big deal. And I
Yeah.
trust through intuition that
Yeah.
the person who needs to hear this, the person that
Mhm.
I will serve in this message is so much more important than that little kicking off in a dialogue that's going on for me. And so I
Mm.
post it. And then sometimes I cringe. And sometimes I think, oh, bloody hell, I'll archive that one. And then I'll go, no, I won't. No, I won't. Because then that corrupts everything I was put here to do.
I really love that example, Gail, and
Mhm.
it makes me think of women out there who because a lot of the women that we've talked to over the last year are kind of in this interesting space where they're, like, pivoting in their businesses, like,
Mm,
what felt exciting and passionate once is no longer feeling aligned to them, and so they're looking at basically pivoting or moving into something that actually feels more aligned and fulfilling, and part of that is them having to kind of, like, up-level their own identity, and in that, it's also choosing a new set of clientele that they wanna work with. So, when
yes.
you shared earlier, you started off working with a different clientele as to
Mm,
where you are today. And that requires a bit of growth. It requires you to get uncomfortable, to step out into the
Mhm.
unknown. So for the women who are sitting there and feeling like, yes, I feel like I really, really want to start working with these kind of clients, but I've
mm,
never done it before. But my intuition is feeling like pulling me there, but it's scary. It's like, what if I mess up? What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if they find out that I'm actually an imposter and I'm not a complete expert in this? What advice would you give to those women?
Well, for me personally, it came back to that I had to really go and do the inner work on my values. So, my personal values and my professional values, because they're not the same. One
Right.
becomes the other one's why, but they are separate. And so, for me, for example, I used to do one on ones where people could just book in whenever they felt like they needed me. And it was super casual. And I didn't want to put pressure on anyone to commit to a higher price point. And then I realized in my mentorship that I was just constantly putting out spot fires for people. And for me, that was actually devaluing them and taking their power away because they weren't learning any critical skills. So then I kind of went out and
Mhm.
stretched my identity and went, right, to work with me, you have to commit to a minimum 6 pack of care. And it was, 6 times the price that I'd charged before. It was scary. I had to go through all of that. I'm from a bit of a battler family. I always had this deep loyalty to the underdog. And I always had this deep loyalty to fixing those I couldn't fix within my family. But when I recognized my values, which was that I want to make sustainable long-term change for people, I want to be a part of you know, a collective experience. And I'll say to my kids all the time, I love and cherish everyone and I will fight to the death for you. But there is a greater love that I have, and it's for humanity. And what that means is if I didn't have that greater love than the love that I even have for my children, then I'm not even contributing to a world that will be better for you and your grandchildren in the future. And they don't quite get it, when we have those kinds of big dynamic conversations, but that's what identifying your values is so important, because it kind of gives you a progress and a ladder of formation, or a ladder to kind of recognize where I want to go. So when I realized that I wanted to be a part of long-term legacy collective change, I no longer would allow people to book those one-on-one appointments. I wasn't a part of a band-aid solution in culture any longer. I wanted to be a part of long-term committed change. And I knew the best way that I can do that, through gathering data of my best self and my own stamina. 6 sessions was an absolute minimum of what someone could commit to work with me and my offerings. And so
Mhm.
then it's 6 months or 1 year. And it has changed everything. It's changed the way I convert. It changes the way my bank account looks. It changes the way my clients recommend, because they're getting far more transformational processes than, just book in. You've got the link, book in whenever you want. And, I'm taking those low price point offers. It just was inconsistent, and it was hard to fill the week. It was really hard to fill
Right.
the week. And so for anyone who's kind of feeling that stretch on, we also have to come back to our relationship to money as women. We have to
Mhm.
come back to how we feel about actually being successful. And I can't tell you
Mhm.
how many times women have come in with these amazing ideas that they really want to implement. And then when I'll say to them, do you understand the volume of work that that level of success takes? And they'll go, not really. And I said, well, this is not what it will always take. But at the start, this is what it requires. And then you kind of see them shrinking a little bit. But I'll
Mhm.
say, trust me, you have capacity that you have not even unlocked yet. This is the stretch. I'll take you there and we'll stretch. I'll take you there again and we'll stretch. And I'll be with you every step of the way. And all of a sudden, you just see this natural survival soften, their shoulders sink, relief kicks in. And when we think about even relief is the preempting that something will fail at some point. So then we go, okay, do you feel relief right now? They're like, oh, thank God. Yes, I do. I'm like, okay, well, the
Mhm.
relief was just the Band-Aid. So now we need to figure out, what exactly were you terrified of, that relief was the first symptom you felt above excitement, above rejoice, above motivation. If it was relief, then there's some wounding there to do before we even get you near the success that you say you
Mhm.
desire. And that kind of
Mhm.
changes the order of the sequence of things.
I'm so curious because you said you raised your prices, you went to the
Mm,
next level. Obviously, there was a lot of healing work in there, and I
yes.
believe that it starts from the body, it starts from, like, healing those wounds as well, but belief is such a big topic, right? And you said money. Money is a
Mm,
big hindrance in how we move. How much of
mm,
this is, like, healing versus taking action? Is it like, is there like a seesaw where we're standing
yeah.
on it, or I'm gonna heal for, like, 6 months, and then I'm gonna take action, or I'm gonna heal
No,
today and then tomorrow, and then I'm gonna take action? Like, what does that look like?
you do it shit scared, and you do it
Yeah, shit.
anyway. You do it scared
I'm
and
gonna
you do
quote
it
you on
anyway.
that. That's gonna be the quote. That's the
Do
title.
it shit scared, but you do it anyway.
Because I think this is the worst narrative going around, that confidence will just come, that
Mhm,
it's just in some, but it's not in others. Confidence comes from action, proof of
mhm.
repeat behavior, just
Correct.
like fear comes from proof of repeat messages. So if you want to have confidence, you've got to figure out what your bridge is to get you there. For me,
Mhm,
it's action. For me, it's, I've got a second to tell a little story. I remember when I first worked in Australia, it's ABN, is Australian business number, when you first register your business. And I remember having all these dreams, all these downloads, all this intuition giving me a very clear look at what the future of my business was going to look like. I was in a career for 25 years. I was booked out in hairdressing for months in advance. I worked from home. It was a great cash cow for my family. There was no reasonable reason to quit that business until the day that there was, until a day that Spirit came through and said, I did not put you through everything I put you through to stay in this tiny little room doing the same thing for the next 20 years. What a waste of you that would be. Now, I had to break lots of hearts when I decided to leave that industry. And still to this day, 3 years later, people are messaging me going, are you back doing any hair yet? But I remember the day that was registering my business, and I'd been, so filled with jubilation of this momentum that was building, this spirit going, yes, 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 you're following my downloads, you're following my path. Great, great, great. And I just went to click the button, and my daughter's standing there, and she's like, smiling at me, and she would have been 10 at the time. And I clicked it, and I felt no rejoice. I felt fear. And I started bawling, crying. And my daughter goes to me, Mum. And I just said, what if nobody comes? What if no one sees the value in what I do? What if it's just a big, absolute failure? And she was so shocked. She'd never seen me like that in all of my parenting journey. And she's like, Mom, what's wrong with you? You don't do this. You believe in yourself. And I'm like, no, I just feel like I'm too progressive in the world. It's not ready for what I've got to offer. Very common thing, an entrepreneurial thing. We're often always a year ahead of everyone else, and sometimes 3, which is why our businesses often take a little bit longer to build than the rest of the world's ready to actually connect and trust it. But, I remember just thinking, what if no one comes and I lose all our money? And, having this tear, and I'm sobbing. And she's like, Mom, buy a ticket. I'll buy all the tickets to your first event. And I was like, but you don't have any money. That's just my money anyway. And she was just like, it's going to be fine. That's what you say to me all the time. Everything works out in the end. And again, bless children. They always just have that soothing mirror back to us of
So
the messages
beautiful.
we've said all that time. And I made the first event. And this is another thing with confidence. And I was sure, 30 people will come. 5 people came. And the next time, 4 people came. And the next time, 3 people came. And I thought, oh God, this is not working. What have I done? What have I done? And I just kept going. I was scared, and I did it anyway. I created action. I created more events. I created more posts. I turned up on camera more. And then 5 came, 8 came, 10 came, 14 came, 20 came. And it was just, again, it's that belief in, well, what's my relationship to failure? What's my relationship to making a wrong decision? What's my relationship to not having all the answers? And when I went in and did that bit of work, which didn't take long periods of time because I created space to listen. And what does that look like? Well, that's going out and drinking my cup of tea in the first light of day and asking myself those questions and doing my breath work, sitting in my embodiment, and just allowing my body's wisdom to talk back to me without railroading over it, without justifying it, without, allowing it to be minimized as it has only ever been known for so long. And so, if we go back to that, the very first of your question, just coming back to those values, action creates confidence, perseverance creates confidence, resilience creates confidence, but also the embodiment of taking time to listen to the fear and the old ancient wounding and just hearing it out. Not fixing it, not solving it, just hearing it out. Because so many times I hear women say, I just don't even speak to myself anymore. The only words I hear is, I'm ugly. I've got wrinkles. I'm getting old. What's my neck doing? Like, there's so much inner judgment. And, why is there more gray hairs than brown hairs in my eyebrows now? What the hell's going on? And it's so easy to get stuck in that loop of all the things I'm not anymore. But I always remember, I don't know if you ladies do much work with like maiden mother crone work and the triple moon work. And a lot of everything that I do, every time I sit in wisdom, I call on that inner child, I call on that mother phase, and I call on my crone self. And I can see my crone self so easily. She comes through so quickly. And even when I'm sitting in fear or I'm sitting in hesitation or I'm feeling, God, worry or anything like that, I call her in. And when I think about, the old lady sitting on the porch, what she doesn't worry about anymore, what things she just lets go, what things can just keep moving on in witness like a stream and go, oh, that's interesting. And then it floats on by. And that has helped me so much with building my business, is really leaning on those 3 pillars of who I have been, who I am, and who I am yet to become. And that has driven a level of confidence that is beyond, again, that human experience of comparativeness and proving and performance. And I can kick into any of those, but we're not meant to stay in that level of performance for long periods of time because that's attached to adrenaline. And so when adrenaline is something that becomes our main current that runs through our body, That's when we get chronic health issues. That's when we get, weight loss that we can't shift. It's when we get inflammation and pain in our body. And it's when we get, decision fatigue and foggy mind and overwhelm, and all of a sudden we start getting and they're rightly so, but we start getting all these diagnoses for inflamed
Yeah.
symptomatic experiences. And
Mhm.
they're certainly they can be there, but they're inflamed because of this desire to sit in competition, sit in comparison, sit in self-judgment, sit in even self-loathing. And it's such a jail cell. And I haven't committed any crimes, so why the frick would I put myself in jail?
You can curse. You can curse.
I know, and I'm
Oh
like,
God, I
everything
wanted
you're
to. It was
saying.
right on the tip of my tongue, and I'm like, no, no, have some decorum.
Do it shit scared. That's what I got.
Yeah,
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
yeah. But Gail, you like everything you're saying is just it's just resonating so much. And I love
Mhm.
the conversations that Sherry and I have been having this week. And it's so mainstream now. And it's like it's about fucking time. Talking
Mm,
about how the mind, the body, the spirit is all connected. And when our mind is taking over, our body pays the toll.
mm,
And
Mhm.
how our physical ailments are so connected with how we are talking to ourselves, how we feel on a day-to-day basis. So like when you're speaking to,
Mhm.
the inflammation in the body and like everything that you were just speaking to, I'm like it makes so much sense and it's just refreshing to hear you say this and to hear so many other women who are doing the amazing work that they're doing in the world talking about this because we're now looking at the whole puzzle. We're not just looking at a piece of it here or over here. We
Mhm.
actually are now seeing all the pieces so we can put it all together. Because I think ultimately, yeah, it's mind, body, and spirit that all works together in flow of one another. Gail, for our women who are listening today, and I know that so many of them are going to identify with the first cohort of women that you described and the second cohort. And a lot of the women that tune into the podcast are high achieving women and they do run
yes.
businesses. And a lot of them are recovering from burnout. Maybe they're experiencing burnout right now too.
Mm,
And also that confidence piece, because I think you spoke to so many important elements of what we experience on a day-to-day basis when it comes to how confidence shows up or a lack of confidence shows up. What is something, if you were to be able to give step-by-step actions or simple actions that our women could take away and start implementing today on their own, what would that look like?
well, I think it comes back to the departmentalization of those three elements that you spoke about. So I'm going to bring in a fourth one and I'll explain in a minute, but definitely the mind, the body, the soul. And I'm going to bring in the voice for advocacy, of really
Okay.
giving yourself permission and a voice to be able to ask for what you need and what you want. If we think about the
Mhm.
mind, so there's so many great things we can do now to help circuit break ourselves. And, when we're sitting in overwhelm or recovering, whether you're someone who's feeling like, oh my God, I'm stretched so thin, I feel like, I'm constantly getting sick or I'm constantly tired and no amount of sleep revitalizes me, and I keep going to the doctor and I keep going to the doctor. And yes, some blood work's a little bit out, but I'm just overwhelmed and stretched thin. So whether you're in that part, whether you're someone who has totally hit burnout, and what I mean by that is like near hospitalization, needing to have big respite care, probably even suffering levels of chronic fatigue.
Mhm.
If you're sitting there, for example, then one part that we could talk about is how to appease the mind. So the mind still needs to work. We still have houses to run. We still might even have jobs that we need to go to. So one thing I do every morning before I even get out of bed is do my neuroplasticity work. So that's the thumb out the front and eye tracking over and over
Mhm.
again, up, down, up, down, up, down, across, and just moving joints in the body, feet circling, hands circling, nose drawing, bringing that breath down through the chest into the belly. When we're practicing those three things, just the neuroplasticity, so the eye tracking, it doesn't have to be big, just up and down,
Okay.
just to wake the brain up. Because a lot of women who are either recovering from burnout or on the way to it, waking up with anxiety in the morning before they've even got out of bed. There's a nausea that's settling in their body, gnarling away at them. And there are often people who are also skipping meals because of that nausea, or they're hitting coffee
Mhm.
before they hit anything else, which will actually exacerbate it eventually. It'll change the way their hormones are disrupted and will change the way that they digest. So the neural plasticity work and that eye tracking with the thumb is just so great at appeasing that early morning anxiety. It's going to help them get clarity, and it's going to help them rewire and reset the nervous system in the body. So then if we come back into going into the heart space, if we go into that soul space and we think about, okay, what do I intentionally want to create for my day today? Not the checklist. The checklist comes later. It's how do I intentionally want to feel today, regardless of what's thrown at me? What
Mm.
do I want to make my mission today? And these aren't long winded conversations. They can just be some keywords that you set up as being front of mind, choices and behaviors that you'll set up for your day. And it changes everything. It changes whether you sit there on an hour on your phone scrolling, for example, and then delaying getting out of bed, delaying getting out of bed, delaying getting out of bed, because all of a sudden you've created purpose to your day. And that changes everything. So that
Mm.
helps to appease the heart and appease the soul. So we're starting with one, the neuroplasticity, that relationship with the soul. What do I intentionally want to start with my day today? What is the genuine feeling I want to invoke in other people today? When we think beyond ourselves and we think about that collective and that humanity, what do I actually want to put out into the world today
Mhm.
that feels aligned with where I'm at? So again,
Mm.
if you've woken up and you're like, I feel great, I'm ready to go. Of course, you'd naturally bounce out and you'd be smiling at everyone, saying hello to strangers on the street. But we're not always in that mood. Sometimes it's quieter. So sometimes it's just a nod or just a smile or just an awareness, just eye contact. But we create this part of I'm contributing, and that feels so
Mhm.
damn good.
Mhm.
And then when we think about the physical and we think about, can I gently move my body, which I was talking about in the bed, moving the wrists around, moving the head around. Is there something you need to stretch? And it doesn't have to be a full yoga session or even a hard workout at the gym. It doesn't even have to be a run necessarily. How can I move around my house as I do things gently, slowly,
Mm.
rather than being frantic, rather than, throwing
Mhm.
lunch boxes on the bench and shoving fruit in it and being really quick? Sometimes
Mhm.
it's as simple as getting up 30 minutes earlier, just setting that clock 30. And I've got a lot of women who really struggle to get out of bed, those high achievers. They get out early, but they don't want to. And so already they're in their fight and flight mode inside their own body with even how they're starting their day. So I often say, well, can you just start trying 10-minute increments to improve that muscle memory in the body? So you get up, wait, set the alarm 10 minutes earlier, get up 10 minutes earlier. And then over a week, you'd only just do the 10 minutes up earlier. Then that next week, another 10 minutes. The next week, another 10. And then finally at the end of the month, you're getting up 40 minutes earlier. Now that changes how we frantically move around the house. That changes the couple of things in our well-being that we get to set up, in that intention, in that mind mapping and the tracking, in how I'm going to contribute to the world, and that I'm not going to be rushed in my movements today. I'm not going to get myself into a hyper state. I haven't even walked out my front door to take on the load of work and business. And the
Mhm.
other one, the advocacy in the throat. And whether you're heading towards burnout, you're trying to prevent it, or you're recovering, the advocacy of the throat. Now, it's not so much all the things you have to say or that you always wanted to say. It can be, how can I have a conversation with myself today that is filled with love, grace,
Mm.
compassion, resilience, and a level of progress? It doesn't have to be massive, and not every day has to have the same level of progress. If we were to think of 100% stretched out of the 5-day working week, how can I contribute 20% a little bit more each day? Now, it only has to be 20% for a year. It doesn't have to be forever. And a lot
Mhm.
of women who are burnt out will say to me, I've got nothing left. I'm sitting in capacity. And I was like, okay, so what have you actually eliminated? What have
Mm.
you eliminated from your life? And they're like,
Mhm.
oh, no, nothing. I'm still doing the exact same thing. And oh gosh, and we've added someone's extra sport in and we've done this. Then I have to have the tough conversation. Then you must be getting something out of this, because you would not do it to yourself if there wasn't some level of pride attached to your overachieving, if there wasn't
Mhm.
some level of proving. And
Mhm.
this is where we have to start having those big conversations with ourselves. Do you like being the martyr? Do you like complaining all over the place that you have so much to do and you're so busy and you're so tired? Whatever the answer is, I'm not here to judge it. I'm just here to sit with you in it. Because if you don't sit in with it, then you can't truly make changes.
Yeah.
I know for me, when I hit burnout, it was when I was trying to, again, I wasn't standing in my highest confidence. I was still running the salon. I was starting this other business. I was supporting my husband with his plumbing company. And then Spirit said, and by the way, I want you to write a book. And it had been a decade through all of the things that had transpired for my family had occurred. And I thought a decade was long enough away from trauma, away from heartache, away from grief. But when you start putting something down like that on pen to paper, you start reliving it again. You start being angry again. You start being frustrated and sad again. That's what hit me in burnout. It wasn't the doing. It wasn't my mental capacity. It was these emotions being rebirthed again. But I chose that. I chose that because I knew what I had to write would change the lives of so many other families, sitting in the
Yeah.
dysfunction and the reconciliation that we ended up getting to. So it took that sacrificial hit, didn't wallow, arrested. And I remember crying through so many chapters and my kids being around the house and literally blindly making my way to the couch, falling asleep and waking up with blanket over the top of me and a little cup of tea for when I woke from my family. And I put that on myself. No one asked me to do that. That was not the martyr. That was just a deep devotion to a story that I felt needed to do. In hindsight, would I do it like that again? Absolutely not. But burnout doesn't think in hindsight. It doesn't. But when you recognize it and you go, in hindsight, what would what would my crone self say to me in this symptomatic experiences? Would it say, hey, love, slow down. What's the rush?
Mm.
What are you in a hurry for? Why don't you just go sit out in the garden for a little bit? Go and have a look at that plant you planted 2 months ago that you haven't looked at since.
Yeah.
And it's that slowing down. So I'm not quite sure, Whitley, if that's answered your question, but it's how do I intentionally create the space for the burnout to be heard? Because it is trying to tell you something. It is not just a series of medical experiences happening to you. It is a deep yearning to hear yourself for once and what you need. And that's why advocacy becomes so powerful in the recovery from burnout. Because for me, it looked like, I'm sorry, Jason, I can't be in business with you anymore. I can't be your person in your plumbing company anymore. And that was hard because I'm such a motivator for him and I keep him on the straight and narrow. But I recognize my contribution to the business wasn't just contributing to my burnout, it was contributing to the devalue and de-empowerment of him because I solved everything for him. I got it done really quickly and he didn't have to worry about it, which I thought was minimizing his stress. But all I was doing was holding it. And it wasn't my stress to hold. It wasn't my lesson to be learnt. It wasn't my identity and my capacity to be expanded. It was his. All along, it was his. And so then it's like, I'm getting you an admin girl. I'm going to, do this. And then it was like, okay, I can't do the selling anymore. So I had to close that down. And then it just came back to building a business and writing a book. And that still was massive. Then I started doing my podcasting. And I suppose that's where I think the journey to burnout meant that I wasn't fully in my business hat, which meant that I made mistakes in sequencing because I was running on adrenaline and I was running on reactivity. And those kinds of things mean that you will overinvest too early. You will create products that aren't ready for an audience that hasn't been built yet. But it all comes from the best intentions, but your brand and your business isn't ready for it yet. It's not ready for that level of investment. For me, it was just, I had all these great ideas. That's the tricky part of adrenaline and burnout is we can still be hyper, even though we're numb, even though we're exhausted. Depending on where we go in our fear and our survival mode, we can actually enter into a hype state, which just speeds the burnout even faster. But it's tricky to catch because it looks like joy and excitement. Feels like it runs along that. But what ends up happening is you just exacerbate everything. You're kind of just putting coal on the fire. And here you go, here you go, here you go. And so that's where burnout can take so long to identify what really is going on for us. The only way to do it is to slow down, to reassure high functioning, super successful women all the time. Again, this is a female thing. Slowing down does not mean you lose. It does not mean you'll be left behind because that slowing down, if that's coming from, again, comparison and competition, it's already tainted. It's already tainted. That energy is not magnetic. It'll mean you have to slog hard the whole time. And is it really even worth it? Because it's not congruent with who you are or your values or what you want to be or the legacy you're creating. And this is, I did a podcast episode myself and it was about the legacy, what's the message we're sending to our children? Are we creating this pattern of ancestral burnouts Is that the divine message that we're leaving to our kids, that we run ourselves into the ground to the point
Mhm.
where we're short tempered and we're not coping and we're shouting at people that we love and we're, dropping the ball all over the place? The dropping of the ball is not, it's just a symptom from someone who's not listening to themselves and not advocating for themselves.
I don't think we could have asked for a better answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I give really long answers.
Thank you for being vulnerable too, because that is a
Yeah.
lot to share of your own personal journey. And I know many women now listening are relating to a lot of things you said.
Yeah.
And burnout doesn't look like the traditional term of burnout, And I think we're dissecting it more. It's not just about, oh, I'm tired and da da da. Like, no, there's way more to burnout than just I'm tired. And there's deeper stuff going on. Like you said, it's priorities. Where am I fulfilled? Where I need to put stuff down, and where am I proud of myself to prove myself? That's all emotional stuff that's building up over
It
time.
is, and it's even, the layers of that are even more complex. It's, having to have those tough inner conversations in marriages where people aren't happy. It doesn't mean you
Mhm,
can't be happy again, but it's
mhm,
that, am I advocating for what I actually want in a mature relationship? Because we can be with people for so long and we just keep doing what we're doing. And, divorce is really expensive, and lots of women feel like they don't have everything that they need to keep moving. So unless they're in danger, they end up just staying. But
mhm.
again, that's a level of burnout because
Yeah.
you're in this heightened state for this partner that you don't align with, that you live in the same room with. And energetically, that just creates survival mode because everyone doesn't know, can I approach? Can't I approach? Are we friends today? Aren't we friends today? I don't know what's wrong with you, but I'm too scared to ask. And so even that is contributing to the burnout of high professional people. And that's what I do say when I ask someone, are you really ready for what this big dream that you have, this level of success? Where are you at in your relationships? If there's any wounding in there that needs to be communicated or supported now, do it now before you get successful, because a lot of women will follow these dreams and these passions and there'll already be these kinks in the armor of their marriages or their relationships. And then as they get more successful, wow, does it bring out every shadow in that relationship. And
Mm.
all of a sudden it stretches that relationship, resentment forms in. And, I loved the episode you guys did about the burnout and that it doesn't look like the traditional model that we're led to believe it does. And so it's kind of being reflective, and definitely even for us, we've had times in our marriage where it just felt like everything was hard. Like everything we tried to do was a long way around. And we had to sit down and have a conversation about, what's our relationship with ease? And again, it's a real common thing in Australia is you got to earn it. You got to run yourself into the ground. You got to do X amount
Mm.
of hours a week. And even now we've come to another point in our relationship, and with the financial climate around the world and different industries suffering, our income may not have been as much as it was. It's still fine, but it's not where it was. And so a lot of our wounding around money and scarcity mindset and all of those sorts of things are starting to come up.
Yeah.
And part of the work I talked to him about is, what's your relationship like with ease? He's like, what do you mean? I'm easygoing. And I'm like, yeah, I know you're easygoing, babe, but what's your relationship of you believing it could just be easy?
Right.
And he goes, nah, it can't be. No, that's just too good to be true. And I'm like, but what if it actually could just be easy for us? What if we sat in that every day? What if the next time we had sex, we gave our orgasm to ease? And he was like, I'm just happy for the orgasm. Does it have to have a meaning? It's all those sort of,
Such a typical man response. I'm sorry.
but I had to bring it up because I know a lot of people will get a
So
laugh out
good.
of it because it is, but it's the intention of what we're manifesting together. And that's also a
Yeah.
part of preventing burnouts.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, this is so, so good, Gail, because
Yeah.
you're not looking at, again, the whole, like all the pieces within the puzzle, but you're not looking at like one area of,
Mhm.
okay,
No.
so this is what success looks like. This is what you want to do to achieve in your business. You're like looking at everything, your relationship with your partner, your relationship with even your children,
And
your
yourself.
relationship with yourself, with money, with like
Mhm.
so many things. And as you're speaking, I'm having like these aha moments because I'm thinking, I'm like, girl, I'm like to myself, I'm like, I've been trying to like build this vision for over a decade. And I'm like, why am I still not there? But I also
Mm,
realized I'm like, my vision has always been massive, like a big vision. But now I'm realizing I'm like, okay, but I'm actually been building the woman who can hold the vision
Mm,
because it's literally been a journey of me having to work on my relationship with myself, my self-worth, my relationship with money, my relationship with my children, my relationship to struggle to also
mm,
survival mode, my relationship with my family, relationships with men, and also healing and forgiveness
Past.
too.
Yeah.
It's just been like a
Yeah.
really big journey of, okay, I haven't gotten to that full vision yet, and that's okay. But I'm understanding that I can't actually step into that big vision because everything would crumble if I were given that. If God was to give me that vision
correct.
tomorrow, everything would crumble. And so it's like I'm being prepared to be the woman who can actually hold the vision. And I think that that's so key because, and I'm speaking on myself, but I speak for every woman who's also listening in. So if
Yeah.
you feel like you haven't gotten to where you desire to be yet, maybe, not maybe, I'm going to be bold to say that you are slowly being prepared to be the woman who can hold the vision that you are called to step into.
Absolutely. And can I just add a little bit more to that? The reflection has to be, whose vision is it? And that is a really big clarity as well. Is it a vision? A lot of, I've had two kinds of visions. I'm very spiritual and I'm very intuitive. And so a lot of my visions have been downloads that I've received from a higher source, from Jesus. And I go, at the start of my business, I didn't make any spiritual contracts and I was just sitting and serving because
Oh,
that's just what I've always done. That's the role I've played in my identity is I'm just going to serve others and I'm going to help everyone and I'm going to fix everyone and I'm going to save everyone. And it's also was the cornerstone of why I only charged those smaller prices and did those spot fire appointments. But when I kind of sat further with it and thought about, okay, now when I get a download or when God shows me, I've got this for you next, and he gets, so excited and I want you to do this. And now I go, okay, hang on. I love it. I love it. I'm there with you. I can see it as well. But first, you have to provide me with the way to do it. I never
mm,
did that in the past. I just spent all of my own money. I got the download of, you're going to write a book. Okay. You're going to do this. Okay. And I think this is where enthusiasm can be a little bit poisonous in our business because if it's not grounded, and it's particularly big for entrepreneurs who are creatives because we'll just keep creating and creating products and this and that. And we're not really doing the testing and measuring, and we're not really, is my audience ready for this? Have I nurtured them enough? Do I
mhm,
have enough of a following? Am I brave enough to reach out to those DMs and do a voice memo, regardless of rejection, regardless of being ghosted? And that's where we start to
yeah.
realize, again, exactly what you said, Willie. Is this the work to be done? We're always going to be doing it because I know I've got more wounding still to come. I've got some of the saddest grief in my life still to come for me, the passing of relatives in my family. When I think, percentage wise, it's likely that one of my dearest friends will probably get sick at some point if I'm looking at statistics of life. So I know there's some big hurdles still coming my way. There's still healing I'm going to have to do. There's still lessons I'm going to have to take. So we don't ever stop. And if you think, and you guys could probably attest to this, ladies, but if you think, I've got there, I'm done, I'm healed, I'm amazing, now let's go out into the world. Bang. Nope.
No.
No, because you're never meant to finish. And I say this even to
Yeah.
my high functioning clients. The list is never designed to be finished. Stop trying to control it. You are burning yourself out to try and get to the end of the full stop. It's never designed to be a full stop because you're not dead yet.
Mhm.
And they'll go, oh my God, I'm not
Yeah.
dead yet. I'm like, no. So the lessons are still going to come. The heartache's still going to come. But what you're doing is you're building a form of resilience, graceful resilience,
Mhm.
compassion, the ability to have inner dialogue and not be afraid of yourself or what is next. And you will love wildly regardless of what you might lose because you're only here for a short time. And that's what it's all about, is to feel something, even if it's uncomfortable along the way.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. We learned so
Right.
much, especially how to do it shit scared.
It's our new thing now.
Yeah, and all about the orgasm ease.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. We can't wait to share this because we're getting downloads ourselves. Like I scribble on
Mm,
my book constantly and
beautiful.
I just like write stuff down as I go. And I'm like, yes, she's speaking to me as well, right? And that's one thing about this podcast is that we love learning from
Mm,
all the guests that come on because they
Mhm.
all have a different perspective, but similar relatability. Everything's relatable. Like every
mm,
single person that we have on, even though they're niched in a specific thing, like you are in confidence, like it's all the same. We're all doing the same thing. We're all living this experience together. And so we want to thank you for taking the time late at night in Australia
I know.
thank
to
you.
It's
spend time
like
with us.
midnight, past midnight now in your time,
It
Gail?
is, it's Sunday.
So, yeah, you need to go to
Oh,
bed.
thank you.
I'm
Thank
too
you
pumped.
so
This
much.
is I could do this for hours with you ladies. I'm
Well,
gonna have the best dreams.
we'll have to have you back on sometime, you know?
I would
So,
love that.
yeah.
And for our listeners, so as you're leaving this episode, Soul Sister, we want you to ask yourself, where am I still second guessing myself? And what is
Mm,
one decision I already know the answer to that I'm ready to trust myself with? And let this be your moment, not someday, not when you feel ready, but now. And if this episode spoke to you, share it, tag us, and let us know what shifted for you. We love hearing what lands and how you're moving differently because of these conversations. We'll share Gail's links in the show notes below so that if you want to connect with Gail, you'll be able to do so. And also, as for her book, you can also check out her book, Where the Waves Break. You can check it out on Amazon. But with that, everyone, we'll see you next week. And thanks again, Gail.
thank you so much for having me, ladies, and I wish all of your beautiful soul community many happy returns.
Thank you.